Hello chums, I recently uploaded a video that covered 5 engine swaps that I thought were best avoided, either because they're expensive, don't handle well, or that there are better choices out there. Since there was so many to choose from, here's 5 more. This video will mainly focus on how the cars handle at their maximum potential. Let's begin. First up, we've got the LT5 engine from the C7 Corvette ZR1. The LT5 engine is an obscenely powerful engine, and it's available for 9 cars, and better still, almost none of them can handle it at its full 1100 horsepower potential. However, the C1 Corvette takes the cake thanks to its lack of options for downforce and its geriatric 1950s chassis. It takes some true dedication to be worse than the C2 and C3 Corvettes with this engine, but the C1 manages it. Not to mention, if you keep the car on its stock engine, it sounds much better anyway. Second, we have another supercharged Chevy V8 in the form of the LT4 from the Camaro ZL1. There are only 2 cars this engine can be fitted to. One of them is the TVR Tuscan, which is a handful but blisteringly fast. The other is the 1969 Camaro, and it's shite. The list of cars that beat it in my Taming a Monster series is almost a bit embarrassing, from the Hellcat swapped Challenger and LS9 swapped Pontiac Trans Am, both of which have less power and more weight to carry, to the rotary swapped Suzuki Cappuccino of all things, a car with half the power and bottle caps for brakes. Without any tweaks to the suspension, the classic Chevy was one of the worst starting points I've ever experienced, and even with ballast weight and a good setup, it still couldn't compete even against its contemporary rivals. Most of you saw this coming, but next up we have a K20 swap. It may not be the one you're expecting though. The classic Mini is capable of 200 horsepower on its standard engine, and frankly, that's about enough. The K20C, meanwhile, can manage 556 horsepower and triple the torque, meaning that the 600 kilogram yogurt pot will disintegrate its front tyres at a moment's notice. There are 2 fixes. The first is simply to limit power. Keeping it to roughly 250 horsepower makes the Mini genuinely quite good to drive. If you insist on running it at full power though, a pile of ballast weight over the front axle is more or less your only option to curb the excessive wheel spin, at which point the awful brakes become even worse. Now you may be wondering, isn't the K20 swapped Abarth 595 even worse? Why yes, but it's also hilarious. My next choice may be slightly more polarizing. The 7.8 litre twin-turbo LS7 drift car engine is available for 9 cars, and 3 of them are massively overpowered for any performance point limited race. Those 3 are the S13 Silvia Qs, the Toyota Hi-Ace van, and the Volvo 240. However, the Volvo 240 is utterly horrible to drive. I actually own a Volvo 240 in real life, and I adore it, but the in-game car is really not very nice, even on its standard engine upgraded to 350 horsepower. There were so many good choices for engines this car could have had, but Polyphony picked the most over-the-top, wait 12 years for turbo lag, too powerful for its own good, rubbish-sounding generic tuner V8. We could have had the screaming LS9 from the C6 ZR1, or the 5-cylinder Quattro engine, or even a K24, which would have sounded terrible, but at least it would have driven nicer. This car is still extremely overpowered for 600 performance point events, but it's definitely a troublesome experience. While it's certainly not the worst engine swap in the game, it may well be my personal most hated. My last pick is fairly similar. The LS7 Rampage engine is actually pretty decent. It sounds like a monster truck, it can be supercharged for much smoother power delivery than the drift car engine, and it has slightly less power, so it's not quite as excessively stupid. I would argue that every single car that has the Drift LS7 as an option should also get this Rampage LS7 as well, and I'll wager that it won't be any slower. However, if you fit it to a 1971 Datsun, you probably deserve the pain you're about to experience. At 880 kilograms, this car is simply too light to handle the full 1100 horsepower. I had to add ballast weight, and even then, it's completely batshit. If you remove the supercharger, it's naturally aspirated and becomes slightly more well-mannered. However, this engine will fare better in any of the other choices. Yes, even the DeLorean. So, that was 5 more engine swaps that you should avoid. Let me know which swaps you think are the worst in the comments below, and feel free to let me know if you want to see a part 3 to this video while you're there. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you found this video enjoyable or helpful. If so, please consider liking and subscribing, and touching my bell so you get notified of my future uploads. Take care now, and ta-ra.